Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. I am Dr. S.S. Samant, former director, IC Himalayan Forest Research Institute, Shimla, India. Presently, I am working as a emeritus scientist of UCOST Manaskhand Science Center, Almora in Uttarakhand, India. At the outset, I would like to thank to the manager PLS Awards, International Plant Scientist Awards, and the entire team for selecting me for the Lifetime Achievement Award. Ladies and gentlemen, I have been working on biodiversity conservation and management in the Indian Himalayan region. Indian Himalayan region covers 11 states and 2 union territories, and it is one of the identified mega biodiversity hotspots and rich in biodiversity, and there are many endemic, native, and many threatened economically important species. The focus of my study was on floristic inventory, then ecological assessment, utilization patterns of floristic diversity, including indigenous knowledge and traditional practices, extraction trends of fuel and fodder resources, status and distribution pattern of native and endemic species, ecosystem services, agroforestry systems, and agri groups. Then threat characterization of floristic diversity, the prioritization of habitats, species, and communities, population ecology and ecological needs modeling, and biodiversity assessment in relation to climate change, conservation, people's biodiversity register preparation, and detailed project reports for the river basins, and education and awareness programs. The study sets where Indian Himalayan region for some of the group of plants like medicinal plants, wild edibles, orchids, trees and shrubs, and protected areas like biosphere reserves, national parks, wildlife sanctuaries, unprotected areas, biodiversity rich areas, watersheds, Shivalik region, hydroelectric project areas, sacred sites and groves, agroforestry systems, village panchayats, blocks and districts for people's biodiversity registers, and river basins for DPRs, Jhelum, Chenab, Ravi, Beas, and Satluj rivers. When we see the status of floristic diversity of trans northwestern and western Himalaya, then we recorded 6,745 species of angiosperms distributed in different life forms like trees, shrubs, and herbs. And out of these species, 4,035 species belonging to 1,461 genera. They were economically important. Out of these, 3,174 species they were medicinal plants, 922 species wild edibles, 683 species fodders, and so on. Then when we studied the medicinal and aromatic plants of the Indian region, then total 1,748 species we recorded. These species they are distributed within different life forms as herbs, 1,020 species, shrubs 338 species, trees 339 species, and ferns 51 species. Out of these, 309 species were native to the Himalayan region, and 26 species endemic, and 126 species the near endemic. 165 species they were threatened, facing different type of threats, and say agrotechniques of more than 30 species that is known. Then we studies widely edible plants of the Indian region. Total 675 species. They are eaten by the local people in various forms. These are also distributed within herbs, shrubs, trees, pteridophytes, then fungi and lichens. Then orchids of the Indian Himalayan region, they were also studied. Then total 960 species they were recorded. more than 50% species they were epiphytes, and nearly 50%, say nearly 50% species they were terrestrial also. The dominant genera were Burbophyllum, Dendrobium, Iria, Liparis, and Oberonia, Avineria, Cymbidium, Peristylus, and Calanthe. Then we did the case studies in different protected and unprotected areas, and studies the species diversity of these regions. What we found that the species diversity varies from place to place, and it is dependent on the total area covered, and altitudinal range, habitats, aspects, and so on. So, in the tropical and subtropical region, the maximum species diversity was found. With the increasing altitude, it was decreased. Then we studied the vegetation for the community diversity. We used coordinate methods. Then the communities also they vary from place to place along an altitudinal gradient across the aspects and habitats. Then you can see here there are different type of communities. During our studies, we found based on regeneration pattern of tree species in forest communities, we found four type of communities. First one, communities with the highest regeneration of dominant species means these communities they will continue in future. Communities with the highest regeneration of codominant species means these communities will be replaced by codominant species. Communities with a poor regeneration of dominant and codominant species means then the third species will take over this community type. Then mixed communities with highest regeneration of one of the dominant species means one of the dominant species that will take over the other species. Then we studies the floristic diversity for nativity and endemism. The native species means having origin from the Himalayan region. Then endemic species they are confined to the Himalayan region. Then we also saw that the diversity of native and endemic species varied from location to location, and proportionate nativity and endemism that increase along the altitudinal gradient. Then you can see some of the say native and endemic species of the Himalayan region. Then we also studies the utilization pattern or floristic diversity. Then this also varied from place to place and along an altitudinal gradient and across the habitats and aspects. Then it is also again a total dependent on the total area covered, altitudinal range, habitats, types of habitats and aspects. Then also it was dependent on the availability of the species in those particular areas. So this was done. This type of database is very important for the future planning. Then cold desert floristic diversity total 732 species they were recorded. They were distributed within the herbs, shrubs, and trees. Trees are only one species that was wild, otherwise mostly they were cultivated one. Total 73 communities, 45 shrubs and 28 herbs they were recorded. Then we also study the diversity of pollinators. Then total 33 species they were recorded. Mostly they were like Apis cerana, Apis mellifera, Apis dorsata, Floria, and say solitary bees and so on. Then we also study the Himalayan ecosystems for ecosystem services. Different type of ecosystem services they are provided by the Himalayan ecosystems like provisioning such as medicinal plants, wild edibles, fodder, fuel, and timber. Then recreational tourism and cultural say services. Then regulating carbon sequestration, climate regulation, decomposition, water purification, erosion and flood control, and pollination. Then supporting services, there is biomass production, production of atmospheric O2, oxygen, then soil formation and retention, then nutrient cycling, water cycling, and provisioning of habitats. Then we studied the say floristic diversity of the segregate groups and also studied the ecosystem subset of these segregate groups, or say provisioning subset like freshwater and TFP, and then timber, then supporting subsets biodiversity and nutrient cycling, then cultural subsets like spiritual and recreational, then regulating, then carbon sequestration and pollination. But what we observe that these say the flourishing the biodiversity of the Indian region that is facing various type of anthropogenic pressures like population explosion, urbanization, forest degradation, construction of roads, industrialization, construction of hydroelectric projects, forest fire and biomass burning, tourism beyond carrying capacity, solid waste, air pollution, ambient air quality, aerosols, optical depth, then black carbon. Then we also studied the pollination deficit protocol in apple orchards in the Himalayan region. We selected sorry 20 orchards, uh, say 20, 10 near natural habitats, 10 2 kilometers away from the natural habitats. Then we found that when no say bee boxes were kept in these orchards, the productivity of the natural say orchards near to natural habitats that was say as such. Then the orchards which were far from the natural habitats, the productivity decreased there. Then when we kept the bee boxes in those orchards which were far from the natural habitats, then we found that the yield was increased, productivity was increased, and there was no change in productivity near to natural habitats. It means there is pollination deficit in the orchards which are far from the natural habitats. This could be due to the say loss of these bee loss of bee flora from the area and also use of pesticides. So these are killing the bee pollinators. Then what we have seen based on our study, then there is a degradation of Himalayan ecosystem, loss of biodiversity, then reduction in ecosystem services, climate change, and receding of glaciers. What we have observed there during our studies. Then this you can see impact of climate change on say on the species of the Indian region. Then early flowering of in rhododendrons, and this you can see rhododendron comparatum, rhododendron arboretum that was seen observed say 20 to 25 days early flowering have been observed, and altitudinal shift of this Juniperus cauliparpus, locally known as Supa or Suru, that is say shifting along say moving along an altitudinal gradient. Then you can see the areas which are avalanche prone in the cold desert region, they are being restored by the seedlings of juniperus and other species. You can see here this clearly indicates that this is due to the increase in temperature and decrease in snowfall, and finally the restoration of these say lands with the help of these seedlings. Then altitudinal shift of this Himalayan blue pine, then in the Betula utilis Himalayan birch forest, you can see here. Then altitudinal shift of this Chilgoja pine, Pinus girardiana, along an altitudinal gradient here. Then we have observed in our studies and altitudinal shift of these apple orchards. You can see this apple orchard as Tabo in the cold desert region is at 3,300 meter. You can see it is growing nicely. So also the it has increased say it has gone up to the Ropa village of Spiti Valley in cold desert region. Then this is supposed to be as a consequence of impact of climate change. Due to above activities, above factors, the many species they have become threatened. We develop a new approach for this threat categorization. Then in this particular activity, we say considered population size, habitat preference, site representation, use of the species, population size, and extraction trend, nativity and endangerment and so on. Then based on that, we identify the species as critically endangered, endangered, vulnerable, and near threatened. So these are, you can see, these also vary place to place. The areas which are facing high anthropogenic pressures, particularly subtropical, tropical, subtropical, and temperate zones, where human settlements are more, they are facing more, say, pressures, and many species they are threatened one. Then you can see some of the species, these Trillium, then Lilium, and Angelica, and so on. Then Podophyllum. Then we also say prioritize habitats and counties based on their altitudinal range, site representation, then habitat types, then total species occurring in those habitats and counties, then native, then endemic, and useful species, and the threatened species. The cumulative values of these species was calculated, and based on that, we prioritize the counties and habitats for conservation. Then also we during we studies these people's biodiversity registers prepared, and then you can see it includes map and demographic profile, then wild diversity like forest types, habitats, plant diversity, animal diversity, and so on. Then domesticated diversity, then it includes plant diversity, then agriculture crop diversity, horticultural crop diversity, ornamental plants, then religious plants, animal diversity, and cultivated medicinal plants. Then we also studied the population status and ecological mismodeling of threatened species. More than 20 species, their populations were assessed, and ecological niche models were developed for predicting the suitable habitats for in situ conservation. Then some of the species are shown here, which are say mostly critically endangered and endangered one. Here, say density in the natural habitats is very low, so these species require conservation. Then we initiated the conservation of the floristic diversity in the gene banks, like lead garden is by establishing lead garden, arboretum, and so on. You can see this is the best example of restoration of degraded land at Mohol Kulu in Indian Himalayan. Then you can see here, this is the best conservation model here. Then this is the herbal garden. It was the, say, abundant land, the dominated by the shrubs. Then now you can see the beautiful, say, herbal garden has been developed, and this has become as say germplasm bank of these medicinal plants, and also acting as a, say, educational center for the different stakeholders. Then also you can see we conserve germplasm of these medicinal plants, and in the nurseries and farmers field and so on. Then also in the Ban Vigyan Kendra, we say conserve the forage germplasm of the species, mostly the critically endangered and vulnerable ones. Then we promoted these species in cultivation. In the Indian Himalayan, you can see the seedlings developed, then distributed to the farmers. Then also we developed nurseries and developed seedlings of, say, the threatened species. Then they were utilized for the restoration of degraded land. This is the restoration model in a cold desert region near Tabo. Then also we reclaimed the dumping sites with the suitable species there. Then we developed agro techniques for 26 species, and disseminated to the farmers, and distributed seedlings to the farmers, and they are say cultivating the medicinal plants. We also developed say uh, pruners for say harvesting these chilgoja pine cones, and it distributed to the local community, tribal communities. You can see they are harvesting these cones here, and this is not distracting the canopy of the this particular species. Then we prepared detailed project reports for 5 river basins, as I have already talked about this. For the rejuvenation, we developed cost models. Say along an altitudinal gradient across the epithets and aspects, we developed different plantation models based on our own experience and surveys. Then the training was provided on different aspects of forestry to the forest officers and other stakeholders, farmers and students and teachers. And again, on different aspects to different stakeholders, training programs were organized. Then training programs, particularly PRA exercise and other activities, they were carried out for the students, farmers, and other stakeholders. Then we promoted a citizen science program in the Indian Belgium for the first time for citizens of India and abroad. Then a 19 citizen science program they were organized. Then initially we trained them, say by delivering lectures and practically by showing the approach followed in the field. Then their expertise that was utilized for the project work, it reduced our say timely achievement of the goals of the projects. Also, it solved the requirement of manpower. Then what we reached to the conclusion is that we need people's participation from lowest level to from our bosses, student, teachers, Mela mandals, and farmers to the policy makers. Say at highest level, then a CM, former CM is there. So we need their support also. Then finally, if we will have people's participation, then it will help in forest restoration, then biodiversity conservation, ecosystem conservation, climate change mitigation, and environmental conservation. Finally, livelihood security. So this is all about. Then I would like to thank to the manager, PLS awards, and the entire team for giving me this opportunity and selecting me for the lifetime achievement award. So this is all about my presentation.